welcome to Marble Halls TV, and I want to do a special video today. Basically, the topic at hand is going to be, as you can see on the screen, hopefully from now. So it's about our good owner, good in quotes, obviously. And if you just bear with me, I will. Our good owner, Mr. Kroenke. As you can see there, Mr. Kroenke and his son Josh, Stan and Josh, are good owners. Now, I saw an article the other day on Daily Cannon, and this isn't to cuss anyone or call anyone out, but I suppose it's an interesting question that he or she, I'm not sure what the sex or gender of the person is who runs the website, but that's why I said he or she. But they were essentially questioning why Stan Kroenke is bad for Arsenal. Now, Stan Kroenke is not very well respected by most of us, which is understandable. And I have my own reasons why Stan Kroenke for me is not that good for us and has not been since he's owned the club in 2011. But without further ado, I'm going to go through the article and just offer my own points. Before I do though, I'm going to go through the article and offer my own points. So, hopefully all you can see that. I'll just remove this banner. Okay, so let's get to it then and start through this article. So basically, Daily Cannon says, I have no love whatsoever for billionaires and certainly none for Stan Kroenke. I've written at length about his dealings in America and despicable business practices. If I had my way, he would not be the man who, who owns Arsenal Football Club. That would be the fans with shares amongst us all. Which I think would be a good idea, incidentally. Real Madrid do it, Barca do it. I think Germany has a similar model. So yeah, I think that's how football clubs ideally should be owned. Yes, you can still have people behind the scenes who do, like Real Madrid has a president, Barca has a president. You obviously would have admin staff, HR, marketing, IT, the all normal functional areas. Someone would have to run the merchandise, the shops and stuff. Obviously, you'd have cleaners and maid ground staff, but I'm going on a tangent. But I'll get back to the point now. But he is, and we have to hate him because of that, apparently. As the news was revealed that Arsenal were able to splash 45 million and then some to land Thomas Partey in a deadline day extravaganza because Kroenke had issued an injection of cash, I started wondering again what it is that Kroenke has done at Arsenal that has fans so against him. So I thought I'd ask you, then do a follow-up piece for your responses. Bear in mind I'm talking Arsenal specifically, as I feel I must be missing something there because I know how I see it all goes a little something like this, to put it basically. Stan Kroenke bought into Arsenal. Little by little, over the years, he accumulated more and more shares until he had enough to make Ulisha Usmanov give up and go elsewhere. Usmanov buggering off is a good thing. I'm going to stop there. Well, for now. Usmanov, like Kroenke, the thing is, he says Usmanov buggering off is a good thing, is it? Usmanov talked a good game, and now he's at Everton, and I think Everton will grow. Well, Everton's a big historical club, but I think they do have the backing now with him and Mashiri and their potential new stadium, which has been in the pipeline for the last 5-10 years, but I think it will get built within the next 5-10 years. I think Everton will re-emerge as a sustained force, which have not been for decades. The last decent Everton team was probably in the 1980s, and that's a long time ago, obviously. Um, but if Everton do become consistently good with Usmanov, then at the very least, yes, he had good ideas. Whether he would have implemented them is another thing. So is it a good thing to see him? Yes, you can say his name is tainted with allegations, but all billionaires are ruthless in some regards, even if they don't do things that are, well, shall we say, have allegations connected to them. Which is for some reason what people say about Russian businessmen. I don't know why, but that's their thing. But maybe that's what Daily Cannon was thinking when he said is a good thing, but who knows? So now we have Arsenal in the hands of a single person slash business. It's taken off the stock market, and we now have no idea how much money is being taken out of the club. That is not a good thing. I agree because there's less transparency. So he could be putting the club up for all kinds of loans and liabilities. As the owner, he has a right to take a dividend, or at least right to use the finances however he wants. So when the club was a public company, um, public companies have to publish their accounts and are subject to more public scrutiny. As a private company, it doesn't have that. So I agree, that is not a good thing. He got rid of a manager he wanted to keep in Arsene Wenger when we finally dropped out of the Champions League. He swiftly moved to get rid of Unai Emery when it was clear that's what the fans wanted. He booted Raul Sanini well, you know why. Um, that is true. I think if Wenger had consistently got top four, he may Emery, it was clear Emery had to go, so he had no choice but to get rid of him. Sanieri, yes, there were allegations, I have to stress, allegations, but that's obviously what he or she's referring to with the well, you know why. Excuse me. And he said, and he or she goes on to say, this summer he dipped into his pocket to the tune of £45 million to land Thomas Partey and avert a global Arsenal fan base meltdown. It's easy to forget we also paid 23.4 million for Gabriel and brought in a few others for a total spend of 77.4 million, with only 16.79 million coming in through sales. Okay, yes, so we did have a positive net spend. Now, net spend does not exist as an actual football financial statistic in clubs. It's more of a media thing. But even still, a club like Arsenal, even though we're not anywhere near winning a title this season or probably the next few seasons, you should expect us to have a positive net spend. But even in the current market, even in the COVID market, to spend 77.4 million as your gross spend or your true spend for, well, if you want to use that term, that still is pretty modest. Last season, Arsenal spent £144.36 million. No matter what you think about how they spent it, they still spent 144 million. Only 48.29 million came back through sales. Excuse me, I have a frog on my throat. So what essentially Daily Cannon is saying, he or she is saying, is that should we be grateful we spent 144.36 million with again a positive net spend? Because only 48.29 million pounds came back through sales. Again, one could argue a club of Arsenal's size and ambition should be spending that money. So yes, I agree with what he or she is saying, that no matter what way you think about how we spend it, and that is up to legitimate debate, we should be spending that amount of money with the size of club we are. So the season before, 72 million out, 7 million in. Wait, is that Pepe? Hang on. So Gabriel would have been 2020 transfer window and Partey, summer window. Then 144 would have been Pepe, plus I think Martinelli, plus I think David Luiz. We got Ceballos in. Yes, he's a loan, but we must have paid a loan fee for him. What was the season? Actually, no, sorry. 18-19, yeah, if you include Socrates, Guendouzi, Lucas Torreira, Bert Leno, okay, yes, I understand. This is not an owner not backing his manager. How the money is spent isn't exactly Stan's fault when he wouldn't know one end of Lionel Messi from the other. The thing is, though, is that is true in the strict sense. But if you own a company, right, you cannot just give your executives, people under you who report to you as the owner, you can't give them free rein. You still have to, there still isn't a basic employer-employee relationship. So if you manage anybody, it could be a top executive to a lowly cleaner. And I'm not dissing cleaners. It's a respectable job. It's a necessary job. But you still have to manage them. You have to guide them. You have to praise them, correct them. You have to give them goals to achieve. You have to give them tools to do that job. So if your executives are mismanaging a football club, then that is on you as the owner, either to replace them and get new executives or to correct them to a proper path. Is he doing that? Has he done that? Why are you allowing your executives to do things that are not to the long-term or even short-term interests of a football club? And then Daily Cannon goes on to say, well, he wouldn't know one end of Lionel Messi from the other. So he or she's trying to surmise that he knows fuck all about football. So if that's the case, then should he educate himself? When he bought the club, did he get some kind of football finance consultant? Did he? You know, if you invest in any industry you don't know about, the first thing you would do is to get some knowledge. So get a consultant. Partner with somebody who knows a lot about football, about the industry you're in. Did he consider that? To be fair, when he bought the club or when he became majority shareholder, Wenger was around. He got in Gazidis. Actually, no, that's not true. I think Gazidis was there when he became majority shareholder. Gazidis had some football experience, I guess. So yeah, you know, the late Peter Hillwood was around. I think he was still chairman. Ken Fry was around. Well, he still is. More than honorary role now, but he still is. So again, that's not an excuse that he can make that he didn't know. He had seasoned football and club experience around him when he first came into the club. So if he has not learned after almost 10 years of owning Arsenal, something's wrong. So I'm going to continue now. 17-18 spending was almost balanced, with a slight profit of around 5 million. Any business has to be concerned about its outgoings, but I think, again, for a club of Arsenal's size, for any big club, any big global football club, you're going to have a positive net spend, or would that be negative? Well, okay, your transfer outgoings will be generally higher than your transfer incomings. If a big global football club with aspirations and ambitions to compete, which we supposedly or ostensibly have, then that should be the case. For example, you look at Real Madrid, Barca, Man United, City, Liverpool, PSG. Let's say PSG. If PSG's over the past 5 years, or even 5 years in the future from now, their transfer incomings were higher than their outgoings, something's very wrong. Why are you selling more players, or at least selling players of a higher value than you're getting in? That makes no sense. Then something will be critically wrong for any big club in the world. So Daily Cannon's point about balanced I get his or her rationale, but again, we should spend more than we make in. Essentially, that's hardly enough to offset the 1.17 million that left the club for players that left the club for players the year before, with only 9 coming back. Again, he keeps making this point of balancing books. Yes, as I say, all organizations have to balance books in some way. They have to manage their expenditures. But again, they have all big world football clubs spend more in player sale or more for players than they get in for players, because they have high revenue income and because they have ambitions, because the best players cost the most money. So there's only smaller clubs that really would sell players. Sorry, that their transfer income would be lower than their expenditure. Their transfer expenditure would be lower than their income. So that's a lot of numbers. So too long didn't read. Arsenal have spent 533 million buying players since the start of the 16-17 season and only brought 223 million from sales. That's an infamous net spend of 310 million pounds. I'm just going to keep repeating myself here, and I apologize if I sound gets annoying, but I get the gist of what he or she is trying to say. I'm just going to say Daily Cannon instead of he and she. At least that's gender neutral to say that. I get, Daily Cannon's point that the club he sanctioned the club spending a lot of money, but there's a Premier League TV deal. Arsenal alone's turnover is roughly around 300 to 400 million pounds a year. We're a global football club. We have increasing sponsorship deals with Adidas, with Emirates for both the stadium naming and the shirt sponsor. There's a Visit Rwanda deal, which at the time was a record in the Premier League, I think, in the world, in terms of value at least. We got lots of sponsors, like, is it Acronis, and there's an Italian coffee company, I think it's Lazazzo or something like that. So, we can afford to spend 533 million. And this net spend thing is a myth. But a club of Arsenal's size, one should think, would spend more than it gains in terms of player sales. That's just the way it is for all big clubs. Fans talk about an owner with no ambition to win things, but we've won 4 FA Cups in the last 6 years. How many other sides have won 4 trophies in that time? How many have won 1? So 6 years ago is what? The time Daily Cannon wrote this was what? 2020. So 6 years will be 2014. Well, Manchester United have won 3 trophies since then. Chelsea have won shit. How many trophies have Chelsea won since then? 10? They definitely won more than 5. It's between 5 and 10. The same with City. Liverpool's won what? Liverpool's won, I think, 2, 3. Hilariously, Tottenham haven't won anything in that period. Leicester won the league in 2016. Then you're looking really in England. Not many other teams in England have won more since then, since 2014. And then in Europe, you're only looking at really clubs that dominate very small leagues like Celtic or, I suppose, Rangers, and like Porto in Portugal, Ajax in the Netherlands, Anderlecht in Belgium. I suppose Juventus in Italy. Yes, Italy's not a small league, but they definitely won more than 4 trophies since 2014. I'm quite positive of that. Definitely Bayern Munich in Germany has. Definitely PSG in France has. And definitely both Real Madrid and Barca won more than 4 easily. Again, I get his point when he says no ambition. But he's trying to say, well, surely if you have an unambitious owner, then okay, the point that Daily Cannon's trying to make here is that if an owner is unambitious, then we should not have won 4 FA Cups. And he's right. They're right to say that. Not many other clubs in England have won more. Only really City and Chelsea. Liverpool, I think, have won 2 or 3. United definitely have not won more since then. So yeah, they have a point in that regard. But no, ambition is not just about winning 4 FA Cups in the last 6 years. Ambition is about having a direction. It's about your actions off the pitch. It's about facilitating and not really having the same missed opportunities that we've had over the past 10 years to win leagues, to get top players. It's not just about winning trophies in itself. The list is short. Again, they're correct. Of course, the FA Cup is not the Premier League nor Champions League, a competition we no longer play in. In the 16 years since Arsenal last won the Premier League, only Chelsea, Man United, Man City, Leicester, and Liverpool have won the title. In the Champions League, since we last reached the final, an English team has reached the final 9 times and only won it 3 times. No team has any right to win any of these competitions, and splashing billions is no guarantee of success. If it was, Leicester wouldn't have won the league, and City and Chelsea would have won a hell of a lot more. Again, they have a point. They are basing their argument on facts. But what it is that in those 16 years since we've not won the league, there have been opportunities that with a bit more oomph, a bit more ambition, we could have gone over the line. Now, he says Chelsea, big money. United, big money. City, big money. Leicester, with respect, was a fluke, but he says Liverpool. Now, Liverpool's business model is very similar to our own, right? So Liverpool basically has grown organically. They got Klopp, and Klopp obviously has done his thing, and they won the Champions League and became champions. So Liverpool is a guide really how to do it organically. And they've made consistently right decisions as FSG, obviously the people who own them. FSG really have made consistently good decisions, which Kroenke has not at Arsenal. That's why Liverpool won the Champions League and won the Premier League. No team has any right to any of these competitions. Again, he's correct. There is no right, you have to earn it. But Leicester have been higher in the league than us lately because they have better stewardship. And City and Chelsea have won a hell of a lot more. He has a point. But City and Chelsea, well, more City than Chelsea in recent years, but City are about to win the league. They could win a potential quadruple, but I don't think they will. But I think they'll win the league. They're playing our good friends Tottenham in the League Cup final. They're in the Champions League. They could win the FA Cup. It's looking pretty sweet for them and has for the last few years. So, yes, money doesn't guarantee success. Of course it doesn't, but it gives you a greater chance of success. Unlike owners we see at clubs like Chelsea, Kroenke has shown loyalty to his managers and an aversion to knee-jerk decisions. I don't agree with that. Abramovich has sacked a lot of managers since he's been there, but you can't say all were knee-jerk. I think Abramovich has a will to win and has a high level of ambition and because of that, he has a very ruthless streak. Now, you can say some of the sackings were not warranted, like Ancelotti. But for me, that's the only one I can think of that wasn't really warranted at the time. You look at Mourinho in 2015, that was warranted. He fell out with the players. Conte, again, there were issues with him and the board. He probably had to go. Same with Sarri. Sarri had issues with him and the players and the board. He had to go. Frank Lampard, obviously club legend, but he was not getting results. He had to go. Villas-Boas was not getting results. He had to go. Maybe you can say Di Matteo, after winning the Champions League and the FA Cup, was harsh, but let's be frank, was he ever going to be a top quality manager? In the long run, not so much, so he had to go. Scolari was rubbish for them. He had to go. Gus Hiddink was only ever a caretaker. And I think he won the FA Cup for them in, 2009, I think. I think he won the FA Cup in 2009 for them as a caretaker. Avram Grant was not up to it. He had to go. So the majority of managers they've had under Abramovich, I think Ranieri was there. Again, he's not with respect to him, he's not at Mourinho's level, so he had to go. So, you look at the managers they've had under Abramovich, the majority eventually did fuck up in some capacity, whether by results on the pitch or the fact that there was no harmony between them and the players. So this notion of and the thing is, most football clubs these days go through managers. Leicester has. What so-called smaller clubs have. Southampton, Leicester. I don't think the days of having managers for 10, 20 years, I think, have gone. Look at Manchester United. They've had managers. Look at City. City have had immense success in the last 10 years, as everyone knows, but they've had a lot of managers. Mancini, Pellegrini, Pep, Mark Hughes. The Liverpool have had I suppose Klopp has been there for 5 years. But Liverpool have had, before him there was Rodgers, there was Hodgson, Sir King Kenny Dalglish came back. So look, Tottenham have had a lot of managers. West Ham have had a lot of managers. If anything, Arsenal and Arsene Wenger, we've been the anomaly. So then they go on to say, so I do not agree with that point that it's knee-jerk. I think Chelsea are not. If anything, Arsenal's the exception in terms of regular managerial changes and not the norm. Everton have had a lot of managers in recent years, over the last 10, 20 years. So Newcastle, how many managers have they had over the last 10, 20 years? Plenty. I'm trying to think about any other club. Crystal Palace. You can probably look at every current Premier League club. And over the past 20 years, you can look at every Premier League club as of now, 2021 season, and probably the average manager length of over the past 10 years, probably maybe a season, probably 2 seasons maximum for all those clubs. If anything, we're the exception because of Wenger. United's an exception because of Sir Alex Ferguson. But even post Sir Alex Ferguson, United have chopped and changed because that's just the way modern football is. So this knee-jerk, I don't think is knee-jerk. I think we as Arsenal fans need to stop thinking with this kind of, it's almost a snobby attitude. You have to roll with the punches in life and get with the times. That the times of long-standing managers has gone. Maybe it was around 10, 20 years ago, not today. Most clubs at all levels will chop and change managers. That's just something we have to get used to. So to say Chelsea don't act any different to other clubs, and that's a statistical fact. This is a good thing, even if it did result in Arsene Wenger staying longer than he should have. Why is that exactly? I suppose that just goes to the point I made in that, again, that's more snobbery. That's not anything concrete, in my opinion. Had there been a decision, Kroenke was advised on by people at Arsenal. But why should it be advised on these decisions? If you're the owner, surely you should have a bit more of a proactive stance, not have people tell you or advise you. You can't, on one hand, say Kroenke knows nothing about football, another stick used to beat him with when there are so many others. Well, the reason people they say he knows nothing about football is because he's facilitated so many bad decisions. Where's the evidence that he does know something about football? Can anyone say the contrary? Can Daily Cannon say the contrary? And then on the other, hold him responsible for making the decisions. Again, that goes back to my earlier point. If he truly doesn't know anything about football, he is still the owner. He makes the shots, or at the very least, he authorizes the shots that are made. So if he knows nothing about football, he should have advisors and strong advisors. He does not get people under him who report to him as the owner that are competent enough. That's been the case for years now. And he's facilitated that bad culture as the owner. I don't want to be here writing an article in defense of Kroenke. I don't mean this as that. It is a genuine question. What has Stan Kroenke done at Arsenal that makes you hate him so? When things are going wrong at Arsenal, I hear cries of, this is what you get for having Stan Kroenke as your owner, as if there had never been a period like this before he came along. It's true. Arsenal have had bad periods before. But again, that argument doesn't make sense because, okay, let's put it this way. Arsenal were not that good as a team in the early 1980s, as long before Stan Kroenke was ever thought about at Arsenal. That's not Stan Kroenke's fault. The fact remains is that, generally speaking, any successful firm in any industry is successful because they have good leadership, good policies, good products, good employees, and good strategy. Companies fail when all of those, the strategy and the leadership is not up to par. As Stan Kroenke is our club's owner, we've declined and descended because Stan Kroenke has facilitated so many negative decisions. And I really do think if we had a good owner, over the past 10 years, we'd have won at least one league title. I strongly do believe that. So they go on to say, in terms of Arsenal, I can't just work out what monstrous thing he has done to warrant the vitriol when it's not coming from his existence on this planet or his actions stateside. So this is what I'm doing. I'm admitting I know less about this subject than most of you reading this, and I want you to teach me. I know this isn't how this is supposed to work, but if we all go around pretending we know everything when we don't, well, we end up with a world that looks like the one we're living in today. The thing is, I think, okay, Danny Cannon here makes an interesting point that he or she doesn't really get why there's vitriol, and they've tried to make an argument which I've done my best to pick apart. Yes, we've spent a lot of money, but so what? Spending money does not make a good owner. A good owner of a business facilitates that business's success in its given industry. So as an example, you can't say Apple is a successful business, or Microsoft or Shell, because they spend a lot on research and development for smartphones, or they spend a lot on building new factories or distribution points. No, it's because they have good products, they have a good strategy. That's two of the critical points in any successful business, from big global firms like them to small, to use an American term, mom and pop stores or corner shops. Actually, I just checked. This is a very long video, but I wanted to go through this in detail, right? But for me, the reason I don't like Stan Kroenke is because it's not just the fact that the club has spent a lot of money, is that Stan Kroenke, for me, has facilitated by those under him very bad decisions. Look, Arsene Wenger is our most successful manager ever. But Wenger was making a lot of negative points, and Wenger had control over transfers. He was a manager in the old school sense, so he had control over transfers. There was no technical director when Wenger was around. He ran the entire football operation, and because Wenger was getting top four, he was getting Champions League football. He was bringing the money in. The sponsors were happy. Kroenke just said, "All right, cool, do your thing." Wenger only went because things were getting peaker financially. That's just a fact. So that is Stan Kroenke's issue, that he only cares about Arsenal to the extent that we're an attractive holding in his wider portfolio. He only cares about Arsenal to the extent that we look good in his collection of businesses. In some regards, and I'm not saying this as an Arsenal fan who's biased, but whilst the LA Rams are a big franchise in the history of NFL, we're one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Football is a bigger sport in the world than gridiron. That's not to diss gridiron, but it's just a fact. You can go to most continents and see Arsenal fans. South America, North America, Africa, Asia, obviously Europe, Australia. How many LA Rams fans would you see in all those places? You'll see some, no doubt, but nowhere near as many as Arsenal fans. So we're one of the biggest football clubs in the biggest sport in the world. So to some extent, it could be argued we are the most important brand in KSC's franchise, or at least the one with the most exposure and the biggest earning potential. Would Visit Rwanda sponsor the LA Rams? Possibly, but again, there's less exposure in Africa, in Rwanda, for the LA Rams than there is for Arsenal. I think that's unlikely. So, to answer Daily Cannon's question, what has Stan Kroenke done at Arsenal that makes you hate him? So, I understand their points about us spending money. I understand that we have had success, and very few teams in England have had more over the past 6 years. That is a well-taken point. I accept that. But there still are a lot of things that have happened where we have not leveraged a club properly, and Stan Kroenke has facilitated, as the owner, all of these negative shit decisions. That is why we're now 9th in the league. That is why the culture of the club has been allowed to decline, and Stan Kroenke, as the owner, is there to set the culture, the tone. So that is why he hired Arteta. And really, Arteta with no experience, that is why revenues have fallen. Since we left the Champions League, and that is why the cultural rot at Arsenal Football Club has set in. So for me, I don't want an owner who is like an Abramovich, or he's like a sheikh who financially dopes Arsenal Football Club. I don't think we need an owner of that mold, right? But we do need an owner who has ambition, who can consistently make good decisions, and decisions that can help us propel us up the table, win a league again. That's the reason we won leagues under when David Dean was here in the late Peter Hillwood, because they cared. They're Arsenal fans, they cared. So they consistently made decisions to get us back up there. Is Stan Kroenke doing that? I don't think he is. That's the reason I don't like Stan Kroenke. I just want to show you one last thing, though. So, the 10 most valuable clubs. This is a recent report from Forbes. So hopefully you can all see that. So apparently we're 8th. So this is, I think this is like an amalgamation of like income and like brand value. So we're still comfortably in the top 10 in the world of all football clubs. A certain football club, I don't know what their name is, in 10th. Chelsea ahead of us, City, Liverpool, United. I suppose you'd expect that. Well, United's a bigger club. Liverpool's been more successful. City's been more successful. Chelsea has been over the past, 10 years or more. So that's to be expected. So yeah, I just wanted to show that. Basically. And yeah, so this has been a very long video, and I probably waffled a bit, and it may be a bit boring, but there are a lot of points, to be fair, that Daily Cannon made that were basically, I could get where they were coming from, but there were points that I did not agree with, and I wanted to not call them out. That's the wrong term to use, but I wanted to address them and really give my reasoning as to why KSC is not good for Arsenal, why his ownership has not, since 2011, has not been that good for Arsenal. Incidentally, you can see the link to the article here. And yeah, so yeah, I know it's been a very long video, probably a bit boring in places, but yeah, thank you very much for listening all the same.